Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, ala alihi wa sahbihi wa mawala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're going to start Unit 7 for Foundations of Islam. And I'm going to start with talking about belief in Judgment Day and things related to the Judgment Day. We're going to go through the PowerPoint. If you have it, you can follow along, starting with the slide number 2. So for Muslims, believing in the Day of Judgment is a pillar of our Iman. It's one of the 6 pillars of Iman for us. It's pillar number 5. And so we believe, first and foremost, we believe that everyone who ever lived will be resurrected on the Day of Judgment. And they'll be judged according to their beliefs and their actions. And of course, our actions includes our speech. So we'll be judged according to things that we have a choice in, things where we make a moral choice. So for us as Muslims, we have some things that we are required to believe about the Day of Judgment. One is that everybody who ever lived will be resurrected at that time to be judged by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We also have to believe in all of the signs of the Day of Judgment, even the ones that are very supernatural and seem amazing. We have to believe in those amazing signs as well. We also have to believe in the state of the grave. Is the barzakh is sometimes what it's called in Arabic. It's a state that's either punishment or reward that we are in until the Day of Judgment, after we die. So when we die, our soul is taken out, and then we are in that state of the grave until the Day of Judgment. Unless you're a shaheed, you have some exception in that. We also believe in the horn that's going to be blown and the resurrection. So everybody that has died from the first blow of the horn, then the second blow, they'll all be resurrected together. We believe all of humanity will be gathered, and then there will be judgment for all of humanity. We believe in Jannah, paradise. We believe in all of its delights and rewards that are mentioned in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. We also believe in Jahannam. We believe there is hellfire and punishment and all the different punishments that are mentioned in the Quran and the authentic Sunnah. And so these are things we have to believe regarding the Judgment Day. But of course, anything we believe has to have proof. We have to have evidence from the Quran and from the Sunnah that has been authenticated. And if we believe in the Judgment Day, it leads to some positive traits for us as Muslims. The first thing, it should lead us to desire to do acts of obedience and worship for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? It's an extra motivation because we're trying to get the reward of Allah. We hope to make Allah pleased with us. We hope to be saved from His punishment, a'udhu billah, on the Day of Judgment. So that's a motivation for us to do more good, to increase our good, inshallah. So when we think about Judgment Day, that's why it's mentioned so much in the Quran, right? Judgment Day is like a third of the Quran, that the scholars say, right? Because Allah talks so much about the Day of Judgment because it's so essential that we understand it, that we believe in it, and it will motivate us to be better human beings. The second thing that it engenders in us is that it should make us fear committing sin, or we should fear even of approving of sin, because approving of sin ultimately leads to us joining into those sins, or it can at least, a'udhu billah. And so when we understand that there's a hellfire, there's a punishment, that Allah will not be happy with us, that Allah will be angry with us, if we do these things, it should have us increase in us fear of committing sin. Besides, in this life, we know that sins give us negative consequences, right? They harm us physically, they harm us emotionally, mentally. But when we also understand there's a possible punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter, that gives us even more fear from committing those sins. And then the third good thing that we get from it is it gives us comfort for any suffering that we go through in this dunya, in this life here on earth, right? We should be comforted that Allah will make things up to us. Allah will give us justice if we see some great injustice. Like right now, we're in this quarantine, having to go through this. Inshallah, for us, if we have faith and we're patient, inshallah, we're getting reward for this difficult time that we're going through. So when we look, we're going to the next slide. If you look at it, we're going to talk about the signs of the Day of Judgment, and we'll start with the minor signs. Minor signs are signs that could have already occurred in history since the time of the Prophet ﷺ. There are signs that could be happening right now as we're alive, and many of them we can recognize right now. Or they could be signs that have not happened yet. They're going to happen in the future. Some of these signs have, like we said, they've happened a long time before the Judgment Day is coming. However, relatively speaking, for all of human history, these signs are very close to the Day of Judgment. The first sign, that's a minor sign that that the Prophet ﷺ talked about, is his coming as the messenger, because he's the last messenger that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending. There's no new messenger coming after him. So he is a sign in that this is the final messenger that human beings get. It's the final book, the Quran, that human beings are getting. So that means we're close to the Judgment Day. Right? And also the death of the Prophet ﷺ. That is also a sign that the Judgment Day is close, because now the last messenger is gone from the earth. His time is already passed of his time on earth. Another sign was the opening of Jerusalem to Islam. Okay, that already happened in history. It happened during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. He was the second Khalifa. He was the Khalifa when the Muslims took Jerusalem and Islam entered into Jerusalem. Shortly after that, you have the plague of Amwas. That was a major plague that happened in Palestine. That plague was very deadly. We lost some great Sahaba during that plague. But we also got, the Sahaba showed us how to handle things like we're going through right now with this pandemic, right? They taught us that the Prophet ﷺ said, if you hear there's a plague somewhere in your land, if the plague comes in your land, you're already there, don't leave it. Right? And if you hear of a plague in another land, don't go to that land, right? We learned some early levels of quarantine from the Prophet ﷺ. And the Sahaba remembered these hadith at that time. You'll see widespread wealth amongst the Muslims, and there'll be sometime there's a lack of need of charity. And that happened during one of the Khalifas. They say Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah, when he was Khalifa, they couldn't give zakat. People said, we don't know who to give zakat to. Like, nobody will take it. You have the appearance of a lot of fitan, right? A lot of trials amongst the Muslims, and we see that happening in the past and happening now. You see the emergence of fake prophets, people that are claiming that they're prophets. We've had that throughout history, right? You have all these people throughout history that said they're prophets, like Joseph Smith, who started the Mormons. You have Mirza Ghulam Ahmed, who started the Ahmadiyya group of, they say they're Muslims, but actually that's kufr to say that you have a new prophet. Those kind of people, the Baha'i Allah who started the Baha'i faith, these are all examples of false prophets that have appeared already historically. You see, there was a great fire in the Hijaz that happened in 654 after Hijrah. You have the loss of trust among people, and untrustworthy people that are given trust, like being put in charge. We see that happening in the past and today. The taking away of knowledge and the prevalence of ignorance relating to religion, relating to the deen. We see that also as a common thing, where fewer and fewer people have real solid knowledge of Islam. You see the spread of adultery and fornication, which we see zina everywhere. It's on the movies and the TV and the songs, everything. It's promoted actually in Western culture. We see that spread of zina. The spread of riba, and you can't hardly do anything nowadays, buy a house, buy a car, except for there's riba attached to it. Credit cards, all of that has riba. So we see that everywhere. You see a prevalence of musical instruments, the Prophet ﷺ said, and music is so popular and found everywhere. Everybody has it. When we're in the elevator, in your car, working out, going for a walk, people have music everywhere they go, right, in their pocket, on their phone. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that you would see widespread drinking of alcohol and drug abuse. You would see Bedouin people, desert living people, competing to build tall buildings, to build skyscrapers. And we see that now in the Gulf area, right? You would see the slave woman giving birth to her mistress. And we talked about this in the Hadith of Jibreel way back in Unit 2. But one interpretation of that is that you see kids treating their parents like servants. And I think We see that nowadays, if that's the interpretation. Allahu alam, Allah knows if that's the right interpretation, but that's one interpretation that we do see. You would see widespread killing, right? And we see that everywhere, all over the news. Widespread earthquakes, the appearance of landslides and meteors, or meteorites, I guess, if they hit the earth. You would see women that are clothed but appear naked, right? And we see that where people wear very tight things, see-through things, or they're scantily clad. It's very common. You would see believers having true dreams more frequently. You would see a widespread giving of false testimony and people concealing true testimony. You would see women greatly outnumbering men in the world. You would see the desert land of the Arabs becoming a land of meadows and rivers, like they would maybe irrigate it, Allahu alam, the climate change, Allahu alam, how that would happen, but you would see the desert Arab areas becoming green again. You would see the Euphrates River would uncover a huge deposit of gold. That hasn't happened yet. You would see wild animals and non-living things speaking to people. Anybody have Alexa or Siri, all those things talking to us? You would have the Romans or Europeans increasing in great number and attacking the Muslims. And we've seen that historically, especially after World War I last century. We saw that. The Muslim conquest of Constantinople or Istanbul, that happened in 1453. So when we look at these minor signs, we can see that a lot of them have already occurred, are occurring right now, and then there are a few still that we have yet to see. This is part one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.